my name is Adam and this is Kate. We're on Jador Harbour in Nova Scotia on the east side. We've been here 23 years. 4 years after we arrived was Hurricane Juan. So we learned a lot from that massive storm. We lost a lot of trees. Between here and the road, we lost at least 100 trees.
We couldn't walk up to the car, we had to go up the fields.
We've got a big field next to us here where there are no trees at all. And actually, we learn a lot about erosion from watching their land disappear.
That's when we really started doing lots of hugelkultur and making the brush fences because we had so much brush from all the downed trees.
And we didn't want to burn them, so started piling them, making compost.
Pretty much now everywhere we walk,
all the pathways used to be tree branches from Hurricane Juan.
And it was kind of very uneven ground and holes and rocks, and so we just chop, fill in, and eventually 5 years later some grass seed. Yeah. And wind is a big part of protecting our house too, because we're off grid and we just burn firewood. We don't have other source of heat. Any wind protection really helps cut down on how much wood we need to burn as well. It makes a huge difference with that, not being too exposed.
In the winter, the worst winds and storms come from the northeast, and because we're down over the hill, we're protected from those storms by the hill. But we get the big winds in the fall and tail ends of hurricanes, and most of that bad wind comes from the southwest. This is the first line of our protection from those prevailing winds of these trees on the shore here. Mostly white spruce, which are very salt tolerant and native species to right here. We've got a willow here that we planted to hold the bank together because we get quite a bit of erosion during big storms.
We put in quite a bit of dogwood and other things that grow quickly for the erosion. And because we're off-grid and we have solar panels, we want to kind of grow things that don't get too tall and block out the sun, but that make a lot of roots, or things that we can prune. So we've been putting in a lot of fruit trees that we keep small, but they are still a wind break, and especially if there's enough of them going up the slope. This is another brush fence, and then a little buildup of terrace on the other side, so that when the wind comes it just hits that and bounces up. So we're trying to make a bunch of terraces as we come up the hill here, and then plant things on the other side of them.
There were 4 big spruce right here, which were dying off, but their whole root mat is intertwined, and any big wind we had from the southwest, the root mat would just lift up and down and loosen all the soil, and then it was washing out down by the boathouse there. But we also wanted to stabilize the loss of land here, save the soil basically.
To plant other stuff underneath them, they had to come down first so you don't destroy the new things you plant underneath. I find a lot of the permaculture that we do is about wind. It's about slowing down the wind and also slowing down the water to stay on the property as much as possible. And yeah, when I first came, this seemed like the logical place for the vegetable garden, but because next door is just a big field with nothing to break up the wind off of the water, especially salty wind, the things just really hated it.
We're happy.
So this whole, it kind of looks like a hedge, but it's actually just a brush fence that I started 22 years ago, just with brush from trees that I cut for firewood. And it's just kind of like a woven, it's like 2 feet wide. And every year I put more brush on it. So it's become a bit like a compost of brush. It's very dense now. And now it's got all the brambles and the weeds on the other side coming up higher than it. So this time of year, it's working really well. If you look down the garden, the corn and all the tall things, they're not really moving at all. It's not a very windy day, but it has done a great job. And often I come on a windy day and I just squat down And
you can be
even if you do it now, if you squat down, you can see the difference that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's just
like
it's hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. Just
that
a
looks
simple
like-
thing.
It would do the double duty of keeping all that brush a little bit from even taking over your garden.
Yeah, totally. I don't know why, but it seems to keep the hares out, and I have never had a deer in here. And I don't know if it's because it's so dense they can't really see over to, what's greener on the other side.
Looks like
I don't
it would
know.
Be hard
So
to get through. Yeah.
yeah, and the brambles really help with that too, I think, for sure.
So you just started that as a brush fence with I see is that willow sticks?
Those are willows because in the spring my ducks are in here and they scramble over the brush fence into the field, and I don't want them to.
Yeah.
It's because they've run out of slugs over here and snails, which is why I have the ducks. And so that's actually just to stop them. After I made the brush fence and woven it, then I drove some stakes through the middle of it so that the wind would want to tip it over when it's really windy. But when we first came, it wasn't really a field, but there weren't trees here. There was just like tall grass and brambles and different things. So, and at that time I was young and crazy and I dug it all out myself. And then the first time I tried to grow vegetables, nothing came up out of the ground. And so I went to check, and like every single pea had a slug on it under the ground as it was sprouting. And I didn't realize how many slugs and snails there were right on the coast. And it was just incredible. So that first year, honestly, it wasn't the wind even, it was just the slugs and snails. And then we got the ducks that we have, and that's specifically why we got them. The breed is Khaki Campbell, and they were bred to forage and lay a lot of eggs. So now they turn all our slugs and snails into eggs, which is fantastic, and they're really fun to have around.
That's perfect. And 'cause they don't bother this kind of.
They don't eat most of anything. The only problem with them is their big duck feet.
Yeah.
Stomping around. So in the early spring, when I have a lot of seedlings out, I do shut them out of the garden until they get big enough that they'll walk around them. But yeah, they're just awesome. And then when I started to be able to actually grow things, then I realized how windy it was. So I think it was more the second year with the garden.
Things were coming up.
Yeah,
you were
that I was like,
wind
okay, what can I do about that? So, and a lot of people said you should put a hedge, but I wanted it to work now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when I learned about the brush fence, which is essentially a hedge. It's not alive. But now there's so many things growing in it, so in a way it is alive. So it kind of works instantly if you have enough brush. It's interesting how much it's changed in 22 years. And going back to wind, I mean, we've had hurricanes and things that have just completely changed everything. So, which is kind of fascinating now to see. Like there were sections of the garden that were forest, and then Hurricane Juan blew them down, and then they became a sunny garden, a sunny space. So I planted fruit trees and walnut trees and other things. And now, within that time, now it's become a shady garden again because all those trees have grown.
Right.
So it's kind of amazing to see it in a short time, how it keeps ebbing and flowing back and forth. And you kind of, as a gardener, you kind of just have to, stuff's going to happen that's completely out of your control, and just kind of go with it.
Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of that video. And we'd love to keep doing more of these tours. If you have a home that you think would be worthy of touring, or you know of anything else going on that you'd like us to film, drop a comment in the comment section here, or you can email permacultureatlantic@gmail.com. Great. Thanks so much. Have a great day.